Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. In my last video I took a look at the brand new Epic Encounters box Savannah of the Gnoll pack from Steamforged Games. This is a fantastic set giving you a whole army of gnolls, 18 miniatures in total representing 6 unique enemy types, for challenging your heroes in Dungeons & Dragons or any other fantasy miniatures game or role-playing game. The set comes with everything you need to run encounters for heroes of any level in 5th edition, including a double-sided map and an adventure book packed with ideas for dungeon masters. But what if you want an even bigger threat? Something that will make the mightiest warriors tremble in their boots? Well, that's what we're going to find out today, because when Steamforged Games sent me Savannah of the Gnoll pack for review, they also sent me this, Rage of the Gnoll Warseeker. Those of you who are familiar with Epic Encounters will know that generally speaking, for each themed encounter pack there is a matching boss pack featuring a gigantic monster. These boss packs work independently, you can run them as standalone encounters in their own right without having access to any other Epic Encounters product. But they can create an even more rewarding experience when combined with other sets, escalating the threat and providing additional layers of challenge. Imagine the heroes have been battling the Gnoll pack, the last of the cackling foes retreat into the long grass to lick their wounds, but then a terrifying howl echoes across the land, the ground trembles, the Warseeker arrives. If we lift the lid on this huge box, we are presented with our Epic Encounters advertising flyer. Beneath that we have a double-sided A2 map, a set of cardboard counters depicting Gnoll Reavers and wooden barrels. These will be needed to run the encounters, but you can sub in miniatures from the Gnoll pack set and any 3D barrels you might have. Then we have our adventure book. It's beautifully illustrated and weighs in at 44 pages. But of course, the real star of the show is the miniature of the Warseeker itself. It is huge. It comes pre-assembled except for the tail, which simply plugs into the back. You don't need to glue it if you don't want to, and you may decide that's for the best if you want to store the Warseeker in this box. Steamforged Games have obviously assumed some people will, as there is a little recess in the vacuum-formed plastic insert for storing the cardboard tokens once you have punched them. That's some nice attention to detail, and something they actually do with a lot of their products. But anyway, just look at the size of this thing. We'll plug the tail in, and that's it, he's good to go. This really is a good looking miniature, and it has some real weight to it. It stands on a 100mm base, and I like that they have used a different coloured plastic for the base's scenic element. It's going to make the miniature look a little nicer on the table if you have to use it before you have had a chance to get out your paintbrushes. Details are crisp, although this is to be expected working at this scale, and the joins where the miniature was assembled at the factory are well hidden. There isn't really much in the way of cleanup necessary. It's really rather impressive. And impressive is certainly the right word for this beast. Measuring approximately 120mm tall, he's going to tower over your heroes, and his strong stance and snarling expression make it clear that he's not to be trifled with. It's the kind of thing that when you drop it on the table, your players are going to have a moment of silence as they process what's about to happen. If you're looking for an impressive climax for an adventure, this is going to do the trick. The miniature sort of speaks for itself, so let's move on to some of the other contents in the box. We have the token sheet. Not really much to say here. They're 25mm tokens on reasonably good cardstock. The Reaver tokens have a picture of the Reaver miniatures on them, and the barrels are barrels. Unfortunately, the tokens are single-sided, and that's a shame because in the notes for the encounter in the adventure book, there are rules for flipping the barrels to their open side. Slightly disappointing. Then we have our A2 sized double-sided paper mat. I'm not a fan of paper mats. I've said this before, I will certainly say it again, but this one is well illustrated on thick paper with a matte finish that isn't going to cause any glare under lights. Normally in the Epic Encounters sets featuring an oversized boss, the map represents the creature's lair, but the Warseeker has no lair. It stomps about looking for food and generally being a menace. So instead we have a little town that the Warseeker has decimated. There are exposed sewers to hide in, narrow alleys to scurry through, and you can even climb onto the buildings. Essential if you plan on pulling off any headshots. Or, you know, attempting to. The reverse of the map is also the town, but it's a different part of the town at night. The art is really moody and I like the arrangement of the buildings, but I do feel it's a bit of a shame that we got two maps for what is effectively the same place. I would have liked a completely different battlefield that would present a new way to challenge the heroes as they fight the Warseeker. Of course, rules for the encounters you can play on these maps are included in the adventure book. Let's take a closer look at that. We start with a quick introduction to help you set up the game, and we have notes on scaling the difficulty for heroes of level 1 to 4, 5 to 9, and then 10 plus. Then we proceed to the section on the encounter, which starts with this really lovely evocative artwork. The next 2 pages tell us of the myths and legends surrounding the Warseeker, what they are and what they are so flipping angry about all the time. This is really nice because it effectively gives you a variety of ideas for backstories, and you pick and choose the ideas that best suit your own narrative. Perhaps your Warseeker is a god, or it may be a powerful gnoll that has consumed so much that it has mutated and developed a physique to match the size of its unending hunger. In a similar vein, we then have a page of hooks. There are 5 different ideas you can use to explain how your heroes have got into this situation with a rampaging Warseeker. Even if you don't like any of those ideas, they serve as good inspiration for storytelling. There is also another lovely piece of art that really emphasises how big the Warseeker is. Then we have a section about the environment where the Warseeker is currently residing. The emphasis here is on the idea that the Warseeker doesn't hide, it doesn't retreat, and it never stays in one place for long. It's always moving and leaving carnage in its wake. This leads into a section on different special rules you can add into your encounters to make them more memorable, followed by a more in-depth look at the battlefield and how the heroes can use all the terrain to their advantage. We have a page on the sewers, which the heroes can use to move around unseen, and then a page on the barrels and what terrible secrets they may hold. Maybe somebody will get lucky and find something flammable. Let's just hope the Warseeker doesn't start throwing them around. There are also walkways on the map for the heroes to move between buildings, although of course, using them can be risky. You will note that dotted around the pages are box outs for GM tips. These are really helpful, and clearly Steamforged Games are very proud of this one on page 19 because they repeat it on page 20. Regardless, this section covers 3 different ways heroes can approach the encounter and gives some good advice on what the Dungeon Master should do in each case. Then we get into the rotting meat of combat. This starts with a nice diagram suggesting a possible flow of actions that the Warseeker might go through when first encountered. The following pages go into more depth about special actions the Warseeker may take. As with everything else in the book, the idea is to pick only those things you like the sound of and to use them only when you feel the encounter needs a sudden twist to keep the heroes on their toes. So the Warseeker can eat people, throw people, whack them with its club or axe, or even, most heinous of all, barf up a group of living reavers. These additional enemies can be represented by the included tokens, or you can use plastic miniatures from the Savannah of the Gnoll pack set. There is also a list of potential cinematic moments you might like to drop into the encounter, such as ripping a hero limb from limb, or barreling through a wall, bringing the whole building crashing down. This section closes out with a nice full colour action shot of the Warseeker earning his name. The final part of the book covers stats. You get 3 different versions of the Warseeker to cater to heroes at different levels. The first is the Pack Cub, which is a level 9 challenge worth 5,000 experience. Then there's the Pack Member, which is a level 15 challenge worth 13,000 experience. Finally, there is the Pack Leader, which is a level 24 challenge worth 62,000 experience. And that is your lot. Overall, Rage of the Warseeker is a fine addition to the Epic Encounters product range. The miniature itself is suitably imposing and really well made. Meanwhile, the adventure book is fascinating. It's packed with rules and ideas that you can pick and choose from or use as a springboard for developing your own encounter. And it's not just for new Dungeon Masters. Any Dungeon Master looking to up their game can find something useful here. The encounter is not without its faults though. Unfortunately, there are some sloppy mistakes in the adventure book, some misprints and some repeated information. And the fact that tokens are only single-sided is a notable oversight. Those sort of mistakes aren't deal breakers by any stretch of the imagination, but they should have been picked up on during development. Also, a single large miniature, something which by its nature is going to be a tough fight beyond what heroes normally face, does have more limited applications than a set like Savannah of the Gnoll pack. You just aren't going to get the same kind of mileage out of it. And even if you enjoy painting the Warseeker, it's possible he will spend most of his time serving as an ornament on your shelf rather than a menacing opponent on your tabletop. For that reason, while I think the Warseeker is cool and does work well in conjunction with Savannah of the Gnoll pack, if you can only afford one set, I think the Gnoll pack represents better value. Which brings me to the subject of price. Rage of the Gnoll Warseeker is currently available for pre-order and has a recommended retail price of £49.99 in the UK. You are getting a sizable chunk of miniature and a lot of useful accessories for your money, but that price point may seem a little high unless you can get lots of use out of the set by structuring a whole campaign around the contents. Fortunately, the set will be available at general retail, and it's likely that some online retailers will be offering a discount, so it's a good idea to shop around. Failing that, I will be including a link to the official Steamforged Games website in the video description below, and you can order direct from there. And that really is all I have to say about that. Thank you once again to Steamforged Games for sending these epic encounter sets for review, and thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.